Hey WBE fans! Welcome to the very first episodes for the Pickem crew for this season of WBE Action. I am one of your hosts, Choice CJ. Very excited to be here with you guys, and along with my good pal, General Tar Heel. What's up, Ben?
Hey, what's going on, guys? It is General Tar Heel. Gonna be your Pickems analyst with my buddy CJ here for the season. I hope you guys are looking forward to all the videos that we're able to put out for the season of WBE.
If you guys are here, then obviously you know that this is one of the biggest leagues of Pokemon Draft League that's ever been put together. So much hype, so much excitement going into this season, lots of great coaches. Let me tell you a little bit about what Ben and I are going to be doing each week on the Pickem crew. So we have a crew of 10 analysts that are going to be making a choice between one coach or another in each of the 14 matchups each week. It's a fun little game that we get to play, and we can track the scores of all the different analysts, figure out who does the best, who does the worst. If you want to leave a comment down below with your picks, I think that that's going to be a really fun way for you guys to follow along with this season. You can keep track of your own scores and see how well you can predict all of these matchups. So make sure you stay tuned for this video every week. It's going to be going up on Fridays. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
But before we get into the video, everyone, make sure to check out the WBE merch that we have. Yes, merch. Dan is going quite into everything this year, and we have merch available for either a WBE logo on a shirt, or you got logos of all your favorite coaches and your favorite teams available in the store. $23.50 US currency, I believe, is the total. So make sure to check those out. A lot of those are clean on a shirt, not gonna lie. I might get one with the Rochester Ride-Ons with my boy Iron Boff. That looks pretty clean logo on a shirt right there. But make sure to check it out, I promise you. And in the introduction you saw at the beginning of the video, make sure to check out some of those Pokemon servers as well. Really, really interesting. But without further ado, I believe we're gonna get right into this Pickems. Correct, CJ?
Yeah, let's do it. So our first matchup is going to be the Melbourne ROTOMS, coached by Aaron Cybertron Zhang, going against the Chicago Cub Shoes, coached by Galactic Elliott. So this is a pretty exciting matchup right off the bat. Aaron Cybertron Zhang has been on a pretty good run in the GBA this past season, doing pretty well. He's brought back a lot of his favorites from that squad, like Kartana and Mamoswine. So Mega Slowbro is a Pokemon that I really like on his side because it applies a lot of defensive pressure to Elliott's team. It sort of forces him to bring something like a physical Hoopa in order to break through Mega Bro. But Hoopa isn't really that great otherwise versus Aaron's team. So I like that it's forced into sort of a bad role. There's some Mons that can out-prioritize it, like Conkeldurr with Mach Punch. And a lot of his Mons just in general naturally outspeed it. And can do pretty tremendous damage to it. And like one of the Pokemon that Hoopa would like to wall break versus, like, you know, obviously it wants to break through like the slower Pokemon, but one of those is Guzzlord, which is a pretty hard check to most Hoopa sets. So like the fact that he has to bring it when it's not a great matchup otherwise, I think is good. Another thing that I noted in the matchup is that Elliott doesn't have a fighting type, which makes a Pokemon like Miltank really scary defensively. Miltank has a lot of defensive value anyway because it does have the ability Thick Fat. It can check things like Chandelure and Ninetales pretty well because of that. So I'll be curious to see what Elliott chooses to do in order to deal with something like Miltank. I will say though, like I'm talking a little bit like I'm in the favor of Aaron's side, but one X factor for Elliott is definitely Scolipede with the ability to Baton Pass Speed Boost. So WBE has not banned Speed Pass for this season, so potentially Scolipede can use its Speed Boost ability with Baton Pass to pass into something like Chandelure or even Porygon Z or Mega Ampharos. All three of those have the potential to really break through Aaron's team if the appropriate Pokemon are whittled first. Like Guzzlord and Miltank, if they're removed for Chandelure, Chandelure can really run in and cause a lot of problems. So that's the one thing I would watch out for. Otherwise, I'm personally leaning towards Aaron's team. We got most of the analysts going in favor of Elliott though, so I'm in a little bit of a minority.
Unfortunately, I am on that Elliott side, CJ. Not trying to get against it, but I just love my boy Elliott, so I have to go for him.
All right, we're butting heads already. I like it.
Coming into Game 2 for the Week 1 matchups, we have the Pittsburgh PIRATTATAS versus the Atlanta Umbreons. So we have Old Man Tup versus Feint Attacks, and just looking at it, heads on, immediately my eyes goes towards Mega Charizard X. For everyone that knows, that's my favorite Pokemon, that's my mascot Pokemon, everything of the sort. And Charizard X does some damage in this matchup for sure. The only counter that the Umbreons really have is Regirock. You could also argue Lantern, but Regirock is a more ideal one because a bulky Mega Charizard X can freely set up on Lantern if that's the case, and that would be a terrible mistake on the Umbreon's part. They would potentially just lose 6-0 right then and there. But with how easily the PIRATTATAS can easily pressure Regirock with Pokemon such as Roserade, Gliscor, Rotom, Hariyama, like all those Pokemon, it makes it really hard for Regirock just to sit there and constantly come in versus Charizard, because as long as Tup is able to play Charizard X correctly, this thing can potentially just D-Dance a win, set up a Tailwind and win, because there is Pokemon such as Scarf Flygon potentially get that speed tie and make it a little bit annoying for Charizard X, but really, really dangerous for the Umbreons because they have to risk a lot of speed ties and like Flygon and Mega Gardevoir, which is a little bit too much. But for the Umbreons, when they have Mega Gardevoir, Entei, Flygon, and Torn, they can all be kind of easily countered versus the Vulcan, Tyranitar, Rotom Wash, and Klefki. Klefki is going to be pressured pretty heavily, but the ability just to have the Prankster with dual screens to support the bulk even more and the potential setup on Zardex just makes Klefki very solid this matchup and very dangerous. And there's also very strong revenge killers on the Pittsburgh side with Mega Charizard X and Mismagius for sure. Makes it really hard for Pokemon such as the Mega Guard and the Flygon, as well as Entei. Going into the rest of it, Dragon Spam is very important for Flygon and Como on the Umbreon side, because only having Klefki where they can easily have coverage for, like Flygon example, getting the Stab Earthquake coverage in order to hit Klefki, very good, assuming Klefki is a Magna Rise. But Como also able to click Close Combat and do at least strong stab neutral damage to Klefki is very important. So if they're able to just get rid of Klefki straight up and like it doesn't become a problem with screens or anything like I mentioned, then Dragon Spam is looking very important in this matchup for the Umbreons, and it can be pretty easily abused by Feint Attacks if he plays it correctly. When I look at this matchup, it's all in the Pittsburgh PIRATTATAS for me, and everyone except Jacob for our analysts decided to go with their Tatas. I wonder why Jacob went with the Umbreons, but he might prove us wrong. It might be the one that saw it all differently from us.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see what happens this game. Klefki, definitely one of my favorite, most reliable Pokemon. Hashtag get unlocked with that Klefki there.
Major key.
Yes, exactly. So let's now flip into our third game here. We've got a really nice matchup between a couple of giants in the online Pokemon community. We've got John, aka Pokemon, and his New Orleans Pelipers going up against Joey, PokeAimMD, and his Bronze Beartix. So in all honesty, I think this is a very hard matchup for John. The Gothitelle on his side, I think, is really hard for John to prepare for. Being able to trap and kill lots of threatening Pokemon like Salazzle, Sawk, even Mega Diancie doesn't appreciate like Scarf Gothitelle with Hidden Power Steel. Because whereas at least Salazzle and Sawk could potentially run a Shed Shell if they chose, Diancie obviously doesn't have that option. It has to run the Mega Crystal. So I think Gothitelle is really hard to prep for. At the same time, John has a couple of good wall breakers on this squad. Like Magneton on paper breaks through a lot of the team. Like the electric coverage for Pex, for Piloswine, things like that seems really nice. But Magneton just gives free setup opportunities to stuff like Volcarona and Glade. Then one of the other big wall breakers on John's team, being the Diggersby, is, yes, very scary offensively, but it's outsped or outprioritized by a lot of mons. You've got like Aqua Jet on Kabutops, Mach Punch on Breloom, Ice Shard on Piloswine, all being able to prevent Diggersby from really being that dangerous. So yeah, just on paper, I don't think I can go in favor of John. I think the matchup is in Joey's favor. If you look at them, kind of as equally skilled Draft League battlers, I just think you gotta give it the edge to Joey here.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I'm in John's front office, and it was tough looking at that matchup for week one. It was really tough. I hope John can pull it out, though. Going into the next matchup, we have the Toronto TOGEKISS, coached by the Hidemo, versus the LA Spice, coached by Kekre. Kekre, kind of more of a new battler to the scene, while Hidemo has a little bit of good experience in the other leagues that he's been in. But just looking at this matchup immediately, very strong defensive bulk for Toronto, having Aromatisse, Uxie, Blastoise. Just all of those are very helpful versus Pokemon such as Garchomp, Crobat, Mega Houndoom, and Starmie that Kekre are trying to use just to wall break versus majority of teams. So just being able to play around that bulk is very important, especially since a lot of those Pokemon get set up, such as SD Garchomp. Crobat can be a nasty bat, Mega Houndoom with Nasty Claw. Starmie doesn't get set up because that'd be terrifying, but still an amazing Pokemon, especially with an ability such as Analytic, with Choice Specs hitting very hard. But as for Kekre, a well-played Magnezone trapping Cobalion can make it really, really difficult for the Toronto Togekiss in order to kill Porygon 2. If that Cobalion gets trapped and knocked out, then it is really difficult for them to break P2 because it's just so fat. It is so fat. Getting status on P2 would be pretty helpful, but they have the potential ability to run like Aromatherapy Lilligant if they really want to or something of the sort. But Porygon 2, we all know how thick that thing is with Eviolite. And having heavy special attackers on the Toronto Togekiss side can be really difficult for them. So they have to be careful of that and watch out for the Magnet Pull. That's why I love Magnezone, not really used too often, but if it is played correctly, it is very difficult, especially if they feel like it's not forced to run a Shed Shell on the Cobalion. But the major win con for LA Spice, if they can able to use it effectively, is Sun. Sun is so strong in this matchup. Just Ninetales and Mega Houndoom are absolutely insane. Ninetales can put in enough chip, switch out, and then come in for a last turn to set up Sun once again, so Mega Houndoom can get the most Sun near the end of the game, in order just to potentially clean up sweep for the rest, whether it runs, you know, like Nasty Plot or something of the sort. But having just 4 other mons just to pressure the rest of the Pokemon and scout for potential Scarfers and Sun counters earlier on in the game, and using Sun late game is going to be major key in this battle, and it's going to be very important for Kekre to scout for those checks, because once again, just looking at this, Sun just blows my mind. It's very powerful, very fire for this matchup, and hopefully she's able to use it correctly. But as for my pick, I decided to go with the Toronto Togekiss for this matchup. Every analyst except for Jacob once again decided to go for the Toronto Togekiss and Heated Mow. Dr. Slacking actually using his lock-in on the Heated Mow. So once again, we got to see if Jacob proved us wrong. I don't know if Jacob just decided to go against the flow for majority of these, or if he's got like a third eye.
Yeah, maybe he's just contrarian for the sake of it. But it is funny to see Mo like with his squad. It's a very respectable squad. I just always picture Mo trying to rock with Jirachi and Togekiss and like all of the sort of Hacks Lord Mons. So him evolving into like a very good Draft League player, doing very well in the past UCL season is very cool. I hope that he does well this season. So next up, we have a matchup between the Tennessee Trubbish, coached by Deathly I Am, and the Free State Tourcats, coached by Duncan. Duncan has a pretty scary team on paper. Like the core of Tyranitar plus Stoutland is a personal favorite of mine, but I think that in this matchup they're not going to be as effective because of the Celesteela on Deathly's side. Celesteela is just such a fat mon and hard to break. Those two mons aren't going to be able to break through it without taking ginormous damage in return. You also have Kofag there to sort of neuter Stoutland and its sand sweeping ability. It does have crunch to hit Kofag, but being a contact move, it's going to get hit by Mummy, and the Stoutland's going to lose its sand rush ability. And I do definitely expect Kofag to come. It's just a great check versus the Stoutland, like I said, and also just a pretty good check for Zygarde. There's a couple of potential setup options for Duncan that are cheeky, like Dragon Dance Mega T-Tar and Agility VIKAVOLTS, but both of them are actually outsped by Beedrill with a Jolly Nature. So like they're not actually that great. Like Beedrill hits so hard with its stab moves and its adaptability ability, which is like a funny way to say that, but obviously you guys know what I mean. I think that Leech Seed on Celesteela is almost guaranteed to come because there are no grass resists, or sorry, there's no grass types on Duncan's side. The only resist, quote unquote, to Leech Seed, it would be Xatu using its magic bounce ability to bounce back the Leech Seed. But there's not a universe where Xatu is switching into Celesteela. It's going to get bopped so hard by Heavy Slam, so I don't think that'd be a play that I would make. So I think mostly I'm leaning in favor of Deathly this game. One Pokemon that does seem pretty problematic from Duncan is the Araquanid. Araquanid has been a favorite of Duncan's for many seasons of Draft League now. I remember when he had that in the GBA in, I think, Season 6 or Season 7, whichever one he was in. I believe it's Season 7, actually. He really liked that Pokemon, but like a Spadef Araquanid drinks hits from Greninja, Gardevoir, even like bulky Rotom. and does really big damage back with Leech Life, or in the case of Gardevoir, being able to KO with Liquidation. So that's one thing that I don't think Deathly should sleep on, but I am leaning in his favor for this matchup. It's pretty even in terms of who the analysts think is going to win. There's actually just one extra. It's 6-4 in Duncan's favor. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Not bad, not bad. There's definitely a few Pokemon that could be slept on in that matchup for sure. I feel like definitely has to be a little bit more careful about Blacephalon. You know, not too many people have used it that well, but it does have a pretty decent matchup, so he's got to watch out for that for sure, because that's something that can blow you back.
Yes.
It will blow his mind.
Yeah. Damn it, we thought the
Glad
same thing
we
at the
went
same
for
time.
the same bad joke.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So for the next game, we have the Miami Donphans, coached by Kyle A, the only coach that matters, and the San Diego Chimchargers, coached by Envy, because GG, it's Envy. Both of their well-known one-liners just right there straight up. But looking at this matchup, very, very interesting. Of course, we got Envy, very, very strong coach in the GBA. Kyle, very strong meme lord, loves the heat, and he even has dual weather. He's got the heat and the sun, and he's even got the drip with the rain. He is ready to bring it. But when I'm first looking at this thing, I look at like San Diego Chimcharger offense. Victini plus Dugtrio is insane. It is a big problem for the Donphans. Victini having fire coverage that's already so strong. Potentially getting sun out of that from Torkoal on the other team is just crazy, crazy dangerous. And also having the amazing electric coverage in Thunderbolt or Bolt Strike, allowing him to hit the Pelipper, if potentially not a Scarf Pelipper, can be really important, because that just drops rain. That gets rid of Kingdra, which is a pretty decent threat, I'd say, versus the Chargers, because Kingdra is a monster. It's a threat versus almost every team in rain. But Banded Victini is also able just to blow back defensive Pokemon such as Cress. Victini can even run, of course. Victini has plenty of coverage in order to deal with Pokemon such as like Diancie as well. So Victini is going to be a very important Pokemon just to be able to break apart the Donphans and have a lot of things clean up. But Dugtrio is also even able to trap those Pokemon such as Diancie that might want to counter the Victini, also able to trap Torkoal and Nidoqueen. All of those three Pokemon that I didn't mention that Dugtrio wants to trap, those are all very important and potential stealth rockers for the Miami Donphans, which just allows 4 Pokemon such as Victini, Togekiss, all those to come in freely and not worry about taking 25% from stealth rocks on the Chimcharger side, and just absolutely just coming in and getting off air slash flinches, or like I mentioned, Victini just wall breaking immediately. And going off of the Miami Donphans, I do see like speed wall breaking kind of coming into favor right here with the weather, of course. Scarf Pelipper, very strong matchup, I feel like. Just being able to blow things back with Hurricane, and of course Hydro Pump or Surf in the rain. I potentially think Surf's always the safer play, just so you don't miss, because it's going to do a lot of damage no matter what. But also getting Sun Victory Bell late game, very, very important. Victory Bell having the ability to get Weather Ball in the sun, giving it a fire type move in order to hit like things like Registeel and Heracross super effectively, very important. Mainly Registeel being able to block Victory Bell's normal stabs, as well as just breaking apart Victini, because I know a +2 Sludge Bomb is able to OHKO a Victini, because I've used Victory Bell with Torkoal before versus a Victini, ironically. And if he's able to get a growth off in Sun, Victory Bell will blow back a lot of Pokemon. But there is things such as the Ditto, which makes it very scary for the Donphans to watch out. Because not only can Ditto just, counter some of the sweepers, but Ditto can literally come in versus Volcanion and just wall it. Like, to be fair, if it's a sub-Volcanion, that could be a big problem for the Chimchargers, and they have to be aware of that. But Ditto's able just to wall Volcanion. Sure, they can't really do anything back, but if the Donphans want to try and Toxic the opposing Volcanion or Ditto, they're getting Toxic in the counterpart. If they have Hidden Power Ground, if it's a Choice Scarf Ditto, which is most likely, then I'm sure Envy would be willing to take that trade of just Hidden Power Ground spam or something of the sort. And lastly, Drapion's just able to Pursuit Trap the Cress and have strong steel coverage for Diancie, and like Iron Tail, I'm pretty sure he gets Metal Claw as well. Mainly just probably wants to run the Iron Tail for the most damage. Drapion, very strong offensive presence right there. And I almost forgot to mention, but Assault Vest Azumarill, perfect versus Kingdra. That thing does very well. Sure, Kingdra is still going to hit like a truck with Choice Specs and Rain with a water type move, don't get me wrong, but AV Azumarill at least helps out that a decent amount, I'd feel like, especially if Kingdra's not able to get its rain off. If Victini, for example, is able to cheese Pelipper does drop to another like Hidden Power Electric or some random electric coverage. So when I look at this, I just see the Chimchargers having a very strong matchup overall, especially offensively, and having decent checks to some Pokemon that the DONPHANS might not be expecting. And as for the choice of the win, I decided to go with the San Diego Chimchargers, as well did every other analyst. We had both Chris Cobain and Jacob, as always, lock in for the Chimchargers this week versus the DONPHANS.
Yeah, it's too bad. I guess none of us analysts have heard about the Miami DONPHANS and, the fact that they've never lost.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Never lost.
Yeah. But following up on your point, you got to watch out for that under-the-radar special tech, Z Clear Smog Kingdra, to break through that Azumarill. Calling it now. Let's see that come out, boys.
He probably will.
Yes, probably will. Our next game is going to be another exciting one. This one's between the Florida Gators, coached by PITTSBURGH, and his opponent is the Sin City Scissors, coached by Patty Trails. It's funny. So Gator is coming off APA title, going up against a lot of great competition in that league, and so would be in theory coming into this league looking to cause a lot of make a lot of noise and cause a lot of damage. But this first matchup's actually really hard for him, I think. The matchup, just on paper alone, I think you have to give to Patty. Like, you look at Zeraora. Zeraora is a really threatening Pokemon with its amazing speed tier and its tremendous move pool, but the coverage, like the defensive coverage that Patty has, just makes it very hard for Zeraora to wall break through everything. Like Lando, Ferrothorn, Druddigon, Seismitoad, they all are pretty decent checks to Zeraora, and they all demand different coverage moves. So it's a tiny bit of the same as like Mega Metagross in the early ORAS days, where it could beat almost everything if it has the right coverage moves, but it has 4 move slot syndrome. Of course, like it's still not going to work out perfectly for Patty. He's probably going to have to sack a thing or two to find out what Zeraora is lacking in terms of its coverage. But yeah, you like to see Zeraora be just a little bit more threatening. It's not even the fastest Pokemon in this matchup. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the fastest. But that Mega Zam on the Sin City Scissors is obviously going to be able to outspeed. And it's going to be able to neutralize Zeraora's strongest attack, being Plasma Fist, since it can trace the Volt Absorb ability that Zeraora has. Other big wall breakers like Mega Heracross, there's actually a ton of checks to that on the Sin City Scissors side. Lando, Golbat, both very good responses, and it also dies to stab super effective moves from like Ribombee, Mega Zam, Incineroar, things like that. So I'm still picking Gator. I don't think you can pick against him until he gives you a reason to do so. But this matchup makes me nervous, Ben. I'm really not sure.
Dude, absolutely.
It's almost a clean sweep. We got 9-1 going in favor of Gator, with only Aaron going in favor of Patty. But I don't know. We'll have to see.
Aaron actually locking it in right there too. That's really interesting, locking in against Gator.
Yeah, that's a bold prediction if I've seen one.
But just looking at a Mega Alakazam versus a team without a Dark type is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it's for real.
I don't want to be on the other end of that. That's actually insane. Next up, we have the Minnesota VIKAVOLTS, coached by the creator of the WBE, Dan, aka A-Drive, going up against the Rochester Rhydons, coached by Iron Boffin, the Fortnite god. But for this matchup, very, very, I want to say a little bit one-sided, because Iron Boffin, he's been out for almost a year. His last league being the MPA, like all the way back in August of 2018. Well, Dan was doing hot in the APA. I'm pretty sure he was first place for regular season for the recent season of APA, which is insane. Didn't go. He lost round 1 playoffs, I believe, or no, second round of playoffs.
Yeah, he lost the semis, I believe.
Yeah, it's an ultra player, but Dan still had an amazing season. So being on a very hot streak like that, and Boffin just coming out a little bit rusty, that's gonna be really hard to come by. No matter how the matchup, it's gonna be a little bit difficult to play off of that. Not getting too much on Boff because he wasn't an amazing battler when he was playing, but it's a little bit difficult, after you've been gone for a while for sure. But looking at these matchups, there's a few things in the Rochester Rhydons' favor, but Kieran Black is just such a major threat versus the team, as Kieran Black does to every team. Once you go Kieran Black, you never go back. But for having just very few checks, there are a few things that can help him out potentially. One main thing I look at is Sylvanus Metagross. That's very helpful, not only for Kieran Black, for Pokemon such as Shaman and Florges as well. Florges typically just being a wall, but offensive Florges is potential. I'm a big fan of an offensive or Calm Mind Florges, So you always have to be aware of that. Don't hate on Florges. And it's very scary Pokemon sometimes, but having a reliable Steel and Metagross is so important. Assault Vest would really help him because Shaman does get that Earth Power coverage, and that's what KB will probably be hitting Metagross with as well. So being able just to eat the hit if Dan doesn't properly predict Assault Vest, if he's not able to hit it with a special type move and do the calc correctly or anything of the sort, then you might be able just to get off a very strong Meteor Mash and potentially just, I'm pretty sure that would knock out KB and do a whole bunch of damage to Shaman for sure. But as looking off for an offensive side, Choice Banded Blaziken I feel like can do a lot of damage. The Minnesota VIKAVOLTS have a lot of strong defensive Pokemon and things like Gastrodon, Florges, mainly to try and counter the Mega Blaziken. That'd be a little bit too crazy in the Blaziken, but it's just gonna do so much damage anyways. No matter if it's a Choice Banded Flare Blitz on a Gastrodon, that's good shit. Choice Banded high jump kick on Florges, that's going to do a good amount of damage, especially if he doesn't run like a fully defensive Florges, even though he most likely will for Pokemon such as Weavile on the other team and Mega Altaria. But either way, Blaziken's going to be able to do a lot of work like that. You can also run Mixed if you want to. I just see Choice Band doing a lot of potential work. Life Orb is also just an option. I also see Pokemon such as a mixed setup Altaria being very important. I love Mega Altaria. The Pixelate ability is very strong for it, and Dan's Steel only beating Skarmory is pretty fine for Mega Altaria. Having the ability to run a good amount of special attack and easily just click Fire Blast and blow back Skarmory, very key. I feel like Mega Altaria is going to do the most damage for the right shots to Rhydons, and he has to make sure he plays it very carefully. Boff has to acknowledge that Altaria is going to have a lot of good matchups this entire season as long as he plays it correctly about the potential steel types or just the bulky counters like poisons as well. He'll be able to do pretty fine with it, I feel like. And one potential he said that I feel like that could really work out is like a Mix Z Heatwave Staraptor to help versus the Skarmory, because Bird Spam is actually really strong versus Dan's team. He does have Mega Manectric, but that's not something you want to switch into, or have it switch into, even if it does have the Intimidate ability, because it's not bulky at all. So you do have to be really careful for that, and Gastrodon's going to get, I'm pretty positive at least, to get to a KO by Reckless Staraptor. So everything on his team doesn't really like Staraptor too much. He can easily revenge with Manectric and Lycanroc, like I mentioned, but he's just got to be aware of switching in is going to be a little bit difficult if he runs the right things. Definitely leaning this towards the VIKAVOLTS just with Dan's amazing experience as of late, and just KB's matchup is insane, and a lot of analysts agree with me, being only two analysts going in Iron Boffin's favor, being Chris Cobain and Chris Selke. No one surprisingly locking in for Dan though, so pretty fair matchup for majority of the people, then it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. I like you brought up the Blaziken and the Altaria as major threats. When your best response to those two Pokemon is bulky Talonflame, you know you're in a little bit of trouble. Because I love Talonflame as much as the next one, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it can handle both of those Pokemon at the same time.
Nope, not Gen 6, baby.
No longer Gen 6, that's right. So now let's go into our next matchup. This is going to be a good one between the Milwaukee BEWEARS, coached by Wolfie Glick, and his opponent is the Newcastle Nidoking and Patters. This is a great matchup. It's featuring one of my favorite Pokemon in Tapu Koko, probably the best overall Mon in the format in most people's opinion, mine included. On paper, Wolfie does have a bunch of good Tapu Koko responses. Like Excadrill is really solid, Gigalith is bulky enough with the sand up to take a hit from Tapu Koko. Golem is going to be resistant to the electric type attack. It's going to be resistant to Brave Bird coverage that it might be packing for Virizion and things like that. So on paper, he's got a couple of good responses, but one thing that all three of those Pokemon have in common is that they're all very weak to Terrakion. So it'd be very easy for Patters to use his Tapu Koko to U-turn into Terrakion as Wolfie brings in the Excadrill or the Golem or the Gigalith. So definitely need to be on the lookout for that, just because Terrakion doesn't have counters. You set up an SD with that, and you go for a Continental Crush on something like Weezing or on Duosion. Those things are not going to live, even if those things are full Fizz Def. It's definitely not happening. So be on the lookout for that. It could be a little bit of a tricky situation here playing around the Tapu Koko U-turn into Terrakion combo. It's also worth saying too, Terrakion's not the only Pokemon that applies pressure like that. Mega Gyarados does the same thing. They're all three going to be weak to the water coverage. So definitely just watch for the momentum from Tapu Koko. I think that's when Tapu Koko is at its best. You use it to gain momentum, and then you eventually get to the point where you can throw off a very powerful Z move, get some nukes onto the opposing side, and yeah, it's very dangerous. In terms of major threats on Wolfie's team, I think Mega Blastoise is definitely the #1 threat. You just look at the roster, and there's not a single thing that can one-shot Blastoise besides Tapu Koko. There's no grass type on the Newcastle Joking's side, and it gets great coverage for like the other water resists like Gyarados. Obviously, Blastoise can pack Aura Sphere and hit that thing for a ton of damage. Mega Gyarados is bulky, but Mega Blastoise hits like a truck. Don't sleep on that thing. I think that can apply a lot of pressure. Just overall, like, yes, there's a lot of threats on Patter's side, not only Tapu Koko, but like Snorlax as well. Snorlax is one of those Pokemon that just can win any matchup on its own. It's like, there's a few mons that are like that in the format, like Suicune is another great example of a Pokemon that can just win a game on its own and beat its own checks. But like Snorlax is not as scary in this matchup because like Virizion has Sacred Sword to hit it, Weezing is bulky enough, and it can take hits from it, go for Taunt or Haze, or even just Pain Split. Like, go for Toxic plus Pain Split versus a Snorlax. Weezing's never going to die to that thing. So, like, yeah, there's some threats there. Wolfie's got enough checks, and he is, like, a 2-time defending champ of the WBE, so you're not going to catch me picking against him week #1. I'm going to be leaning in Wolfie's favor, and it's almost a clean sweep for him. We've got one coach going for Patters. Patters is definitely one of my favorite content creators to watch. Great attitude and just is so excited about the battles. But I think he's gonna meet his match in this game.
For sure, dude. It's really hard to go against Wolfie in the WBE. This is basically like his home. He made this his turf. Like, I'm gonna be really interested to see the belt on someone else this year. Not that we've had it before, but I feel like Wolfie's got his eyes on it based off of the championships he's already had here.
Yeah.
Alright, going into the next game, we have the Seattle SEAKINGS coached by Jodor going up against the Bristol City Blazekins coached by Game Boy Luke. Now, looking at this matchup, I'm just overwhelmed by the offensive matchup that the Seattle SEAKINGS have versus the Blazekins. It is absolutely insane. The defensive Pokemon that the Blazekins benefit from the most, like in Primarina, Necrozma, Mega Scizor, those are the main ones I'm kind of looking at in this matchup. They just get overwhelmed so much by the Pokemon such as Infernape, Haxorus, and Sneasel. Just those three constantly getting chip off and then just potentially sweeping afterwards. It's just going to be very difficult for them to get past that. Necrozma and, of course, Mega Scizor have reliable recovery, but those two are the most susceptible to also just getting blown back by, like, Infernape, for example, for Mega Scizor, as well as Haxorus just setting up and sweeping on Necrozma potentially. So, you have to be very aware of that. Z Infernape and Z Haxorus have amazing matchups here, in my opinion. Typically, you want to run like Life Orb or Choice Band for Infernape strictly to get the more power out of it for the other turns that you don't use a Z move, but sometimes you just can't do it, and it's still beneficial to run the Z move. Like Z Gunk Shot, he might feel like it's very beneficial versus the Primarina if he just wants to get rid of that, so Sneasel has one less check to it, or something of the sort. Or Haxorus could potentially just sweep from there on out if he's like banded Dragon type move, for example. Even though he probably wants to check Mega Scizor too. But offensive Donphan, I feel like, is also pretty good here. You can still be a max HP Donphan and still be very bulky, don't get me wrong. You can still run just like Stealth Rocks and then Ice Shard, Earthquake, Fire Fang, and then he has amazing coverage for the entire team. Of course, getting the Ice Shard for the Lando Eye, having the Fire Fang for the Mega Scizor, and just clicking EQ versus so many things on his team. Max Attack Adamant Donphan can definitely put in the work while still getting up your Stealth Rocks if you need to. And lastly, Mega Venusaur. A lot of people love Mega Venusaur just a wall, but offensive Mega Venusaur is so good. That thing's special attack stat is insane. I believe it's like 120 or something like that. It's like, it's really up there. But having, of course, HP Fire for Mega Scizor, Sludge Bomb for, and Giga Drain for like stabs, and then having Earthquake for things like Togedemaru, as well as Tentacruel. Very, very strong. But when you are using Mega Venusaur, you do have to watch out for the what's that thing? What's the ability Tentacruel has? CJ.
Liquid Ooze? Or
Liquid Ooze, there we go. Liquid Ooze to where Giga Drain would actually hurt Mega Venusaur instead of getting health back. So you have to be aware of that, which is very cool tech on Tentacruel. But whether or not he's going to use it, you have to watch out. But as for the Blazekins, Z-Lando has like no switch-ins, and that's going to be a kind of repetitive thing. A lot of places, a lot of leagues have been using Lando Eye with no sheer force and putting it tier 2, but that thing with Z moves is absolutely scary, especially in free like Z format. like, just with the coverage it gets with Z-Move, that's basically no switch-ins if he's able just to clean it up afterwards, because the bulky Pokemon that Jodor might want to switch in, such as Jellicent or Donphan or potentially Granbull, they might just get bopped the next turn to, like, a Fly Z, because that thing's going to do a whole bunch of damage. Can even do Ground Z, whatever he feels like is most necessary, because either way, it's going to be picking up a kill. That thing is very strong. And Lando can easily still be run mix, even if it doesn't have that sheer force ability to help boost it. But having Mega Scizor to counter Sneasel is also very important, because that is going to be the main thing that's going to want to revenge versus Lando, alongside with Donphan. Just being able to have that strong counter versus those Ice-type moves are very helpful. And Scizor can potentially be, you know, like an SD sweeper, even though I don't feel like that's as possible with Infernape. But just being able to be a proper counter and then you turning out could give a lot of momentum in the Blaziken's favor, 1,000,000%. And while having also things such as Rock Polish and Necrozma always being a potential setup in the back that a lot of people fear, can easily always like be given a weakness policy or something and just absolutely do whatever, especially after Lando potentially just breaks apart a lot of the fat walls or just gets off necessary chip for Necrozma to win. Either way, very scary. But the Seattle SEAKINGS ability just to revenge kill basically anything with the amount of coverage his counter has, as well as just how strong the offense is, it's going to be very difficult for the Blazekins to have like just about any momentum in this match, I feel like, because he's just always got to worry about the next thing. Even if he does have like a turn maybe in his favor, like then he's got to fight for the next like 5 turns. I feel like this offense is just too overwhelming. He can stay in and click moves just majority of the time, especially if Luke doesn't know all the coverage things get. Like if he forgets like Gunk Shot on Infernape, for example, because I know some people forget that with their fairy types and they just straight up lose it right then and there. So has to be aware of that. And I just see him like already losing 1 or 2 mons before he realizes that he's like at a disadvantage, and he's already lost 1 potential win con or something of the sort. Like I feel like this is gonna be a pretty fast game if Jordan plays this as offensively as I see like the game can be. So just with that being said, I have it locked in on the Seattle SEAKINGS, and I would say it's about actually 50-50 when I'm looking at the analyst crew. Yeah, it's 5 versus 5, so no one locking in on this. So it's actually going to be a really good match for a lot of people, I feel like, and no one really having an overwhelming side here.
Yeah, I struggled to make this pick a lot, just because both sides are viable. But I am definitely looking forward to the Scizor versus Mega Scizor moment. They're going to reenact the Spider-Man pointing at one another. You know, say, oh, no, you pointed at me first. Like,
no, you bullet punch. No, you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that moment more than anything else this week. So next, we're going to go into a matchup between the New York NOIBATS, coached by Mewtwo fan Nate, and the Durham Druddigons, coached by 6-Foot Hacks, aka Leo. So the first thing I noticed right off the bat is the Mega Lopunny on Leo's side. Mega Lopunny is, at least for me, a Pokemon that I specifically try to draft for. Like, I try and, when I build my team, I say, okay, what's going to be my switch into Mega Lopunny on this draft? I look at Nate's team, and I don't quite see what his response is going to be. Yes, he has Sylveon to be a fighting resist, but Sylveon doesn't have great physical defense. Yes, you can invest into physical defense and make it relatively bulky, but I don't think Sylveon's going to be able to take 2 returns after hazards, or at least not going to be able to do it very easily. And the fact that Sylveon, it's pretty easy to switch into if it's bulky. Like you have the Steelix there and the Alolan Muck to be very safe pivots into like a non-invested Sylveon, like not invested into special attack. Like I don't think that Sylveon's going to be very scary in this matchup. So Lopunny definitely the #1 threat in this matchup on either side. Luckily, Nate does have good responses, I think, to some of Leo's other threats. So, for example, he's got Ice Shard priority on Cloyster for Dragonite. He does have a Thunderous Incarnate, which can potentially outspeed and revenge kill a Z Rain Dance Manaphy. He does have Hydreigon as a pretty strong Dark-type attacker for Reuniclus, although you don't want to sleep on like Calm Mind Colbur Berry going into Focus Blast, because that can definitely still do a lot to Hydreigon, and it's not going to take a lot from a Dark Pulse. So like it's not all bad news for Nate, you know, and he does have, of course, Swellow being there, really powerful Pokemon for wall breaking with a Choice Specs and Boomburst. Steelix is going to be pressured by that and Sylveon. Like if Sylveon can somehow whittle down the Steelix with time, it's going to make it a lot harder for him to check the Swellow. So there's definitely some options there. Lucario 2 is another great Pokemon that's just scary in general. But I am going to give the edge overall to Leo. He's got so much experience, multiple championships from UCL, GBA D League, P4G, and things like that. And he is going to clean sweep the Pickems this week versus Nate. So best of luck to Nate, but I think that's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, for sure. I decided to use my lock in there for Leo versus Nate, strictly because we know how amazing Leo is. Nate is still an amazing coach, and I love my boy to death. Both of these guys are my very good friends, but just the matchup is very overwhelming, and Mega Lopunny is going to do a massive amount of damage. If Leo plays that correctly, he can basically just win the game. But honestly, CJ, even though I don't like this Pokemon, a Nasty Plot Semi-Poor is looking pretty scary for Leo's team. I'm not going to be wrong.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, you just got the Cradily there, potentially. I assume the Semi-Poor, though, gets some sort of ice coverage.
It does get Ice Beam, of course.
Yeah, so
it could just run Nasty Plot, Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, and what was the other move I was thinking of? Whatever, something else. As long as Mega Lopunny isn't there, we could actually potentially see like a Semi-Poor do something, and that'd blow my mind.
That would blow my mind.
Alright, going into the next game, we have the South Texas Sableyes, coached by In Vivid Color, going up against the Pittsburgh Pichus, coached by Numb Nexus. This matchup, pretty interesting, to say the least. Once again, I look at amazing wall breakers. I feel like I'm repeating myself with all this offense, but like it's what my eyes go to. I'm a pretty offensive player. So when I look at it, the South Texas Sableyes, Nidoking, Hawlucha, Galvantula, enough said. They basically just wall break everything on the Pichu side, and they kind of abuse the Pichu's kind of poor speed. Nexus has a really like bulky team, and his fastest thing is base 100 and Mega Man Machamp and Zapdos. And I don't think I'm looking at that wrong. No, I am not. They were all 100 and below. So he can easily abuse that. He can even bring a Choice Specs Noivern if he wants to. Sure, I don't think Sharpedo is the best matchup, but either way, easily abuse these speed tiers with the amount of offense that the Sableyes have, because even the bulk isn't, I wouldn't say the greatest on the Pichu side. He can easily overwhelm that. Clefairy is not even a check to Hawlucha because it doesn't get the unaware ability like its big sister Clef does, but Galvantula really just clicks moves versus this thing. Between Galvantula and Nidoking, that's really like pressures Goodrow just being, the stereotypical Spadef Assault Vest Goodrow that typically counters a lot of special attackers, but that's just going to be very difficult, especially when the Pichu's main wall breaker in Mega Metacham is going up versus a Mew week 1. That is very depressing. When your main Pokemon has the hardest counter week 1, that's just so unfortunate. Especially when the Pichus don't have that great of a Pursuit Trapper, the Pursuit Trapper only being Skuntank, which is pretty meh, I'd say. Skuntank, I like the Pokemon, don't get me wrong, but there's very few good Pursuit Trappers out there, and I don't feel like Skuntank's the best, and that would really help out Metacham in the long run. But just being able to not really use Metacham in this game, because Mew's gonna wall it off pretty hard, unless he brings like, a potential Calm Mind Metacham, I suppose. Metacham's really not going to be doing anything this game, so that leaves his wall breaking down to Exploud, or potentially like Magmortar. Like, the Pichus have a pretty passive and bulky team, I feel like. Yes, these are bulky mons with decent offensive stats, I'd say, but he doesn't have the best offensive team, and that's really going to hurt him, like, just along with his speed tiers. I feel like the Sableyes are going to easily just be able to abuse that, whether it's setup, whether it's just running like a choice item and just plowing right through it. I feel like it's going to be a very one-sided match in my opinion, and the Pichu's prep will be a little bit easier, I feel like, because the Sableyes matchups are pretty one-sided, because I feel like Pokemon like Alolan Sandslash, Mega Sharpedo, and Tabubulu don't have the best matchups, but it's still something you have to prep for, of course. You always have to be aware of every Pokemon on the team, but if he looks at just like the immediate offense that I see and everything of the sort, and able to notify the major threats and counter those properly, he has a much better chance. But once again, you have to be aware of everything, and I feel like this matchup is just pretty poor, and I definitely had to put in for the South Texas Sableyes, my boy in Vivid Color, with only one analyst going up against that, with the Aaron 2420 going against it.
Yeah, it's tough. Like you said, the Nexus has a very bulky team, but I feel like the Pokemon like Tangrowth are going to be worn down with time, dealing with something like Bulu, opening the door for something like Sharpedo in the late game. And yeah, the speed being as low as it is going to make it so hard. Like, he could run something like Scarf X-Splat or Scarf Goodra to overcome that speed difference, but getting up webs with Galvantula is going to totally mitigate that. And once the webs get up, what do you do to check, like, Sharpedo or even Mew? Like, there's nothing. Yeah, I'm also going in favor of Invivid Color for this one. But it's a match that I'm excited for. Nexus always has funny battles.
Oh, that's true. Nexus is
he's a good dude. Alright, so we are down to our final 2 games. I'm going to be breaking down the match here between the Milwaukee SAWSBUCKS, coached by Steve, aka Magnitude, and his opponent is the New York Marauders, coached by Mr. Talent. So Drew's team is a little bit odd. Like, there's definitely some major threats on it. Latios is one of my favorite mons in general, just with how versatile it is, both offensively and in terms of support. Buzzwole in particular is pretty scary, I think, for Steve's team. There's not a lot of great switch-ins to it. It's basically just Clef, and then maybe Shiinotic, but Shiinotic is not a real Pokemon, so that obviously doesn't really count for much. But like, otherwise the structure of Drew's team is a little odd right now. He doesn't have a ground type, and Steve has on his roster a Thunderous Therian form with base 145 special attack that can very freely run Volt Switch on the entirety of Drew's team. He has a couple of resists, like Lottie is pretty bulky to resist those electric type attacks, but you know, you just get that momentum and you go into something like Clefable, and unless it's like a Trick Scarf Lottie, it just gives Clefable like free reign to run Calm Mind. You could run Calm Mind, HP Ground, and there's really no responses for it. Like, the Nihilego is there as a powerful poison type attacker, but if Clefable can boost enough, or if he wants to either run a Kebia Berry on the Clefable to protect itself from Nihilego's Sludge Wave, or just somehow lure the Nihilego otherwise, Nihilego might want to try and bop like Garchomp with HP Ice, like Garchomp Mega, but if it's bulky enough to take a HP Ice easily, then you can easily kill it with Earthquake that way. So like, Clefable I see as being very scary. The other, like, a fairy resist on the team, of course, is Empoleon. It shares that ground weakness with Nihilego. Empoleon just doesn't threaten Clefable like whatsoever. Yes, it does get Roar if it wants to try and prevent Clefable from setting up by phasing it out. But that only works for so long. If you get into a situation where it's last Mon Clefable, how does Empoleon deal with Clef? I guess it could haze it too, but I don't know. Like, Empoleon, it's a tough Mon to use, I think. It's going to be very deterred by Thunderous Therian. So Empoleon's not a great Mon here, I don't think. You know, I'm really looking out for the Clef and the Thundy on Steve's side to do damage. The other thing worth mentioning, and this is where I'll wrap up my notes here, is that Steve is known as one of the most unpredictable battlers in all of YouTube. He loves to bring spicy sets, so there's a decent chance that he could bring some sort of cheeky set that catches Drew completely off guard. And that he just doesn't have a way to deal with it. So you can never sleep on the type of heat that Steve likes to bring. So I'm leaning in favor of Steve this match. What do you think there, Ben?
I did, in fact, have the New York Marauders, so I was going against you a little there. But that's me just being more of a fan of Drew, I feel like. I looked into the matchup a little bit, and there were a few things that I feel like could be dangerous. I always like to look out for Calm Mind Latios, but whether or not he's able to get around the Clefable is really important, because I'm pretty sure Steve's going to try his best not to let that thing die at all, because if he doesn't let it like go down anything like Nihilego, it's really difficult for the Marauders to break it. I do agree on that, but there's just still potential, and I'm just pulling for my boy Drew. That's basically all.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I like them both as content creators, so no hard feelings, guys.
For sure, everyone in here is an amazing content creator, and you should go subscribe to them and ring the bell. Smile face.
That wasn't rehearsed.
No, not at all. Alright guys, for the last matchup for this week, we have the Chicago Bouffalants versus the Maryland Torterrapins, the Bouffalants coached by Sacred, and the Maryland Torterrapins coached by my good friend Under the Radar, or Kelly. When I'm just looking at the matchup, Zygarde is so scary versus the Bouffalants. The fact that their grass type is Amoonguss and that's already neutral to Thousand Arrow spam is just scary. Banded Zygarde basically gets a kill versus the Bouffalants. Even if you have Tapu Fini in the back, yeah, that's doing a lot of damage if you decide to have like enough speed in order to outspeed like an Adamant Zygarde. Like, then you're taking so much damage. Maybe you can run an Ipapa Berry with it, and then you kind of scare it out, but then you only have like, you know, one more switch in after that. So a well played Banded Zygarde, very scary. But even then, a setup Zygarde could definitely happen for sure, because there's not many things that'd be too helpful versus him. He does have the Clear Smog Amoonguss if he really wants to run that, and he has, of course, like Roar Arcanine. But other than that, I feel like Zygarde can kind of just set up and scare for the rest of the team, especially if he gets rid of that Finny kind of early on, because he can pressure that with quite a few things, especially with things like Superior, getting off a lot of chip with Darmanitan. Doesn't even appreciate a Heavy Slam from Mega Aggron for sure. And even Xurkitree for sure. Xurkitree is always very scary, especially when your ground type is 4 times weak to the energy ball that it could carry. But just the fact that with this offensive capabilities behind Zygarde and at least some support it can get with chip off other Pokemon, the Torterrapins have very strong bulk in Mesprit, Milo, and Mega Aggron to handle for majority of the team. Like Milo's able to deal with Pokemon such as Arcanine, Mega Aerodactyl, Kyurem, Tapu Fini. That is just so much right there right off the bat. Unfortunately, if it's like a really offensive Life Orb Reckless High Jump Kick Mienshao, Milotic, even Marvel Scale Milotic can't deal with that. That thing is just so strong. But even Mega Aggron once again is going to help deal with Amoonguss, Mega Aerodactyl, Espeon, Tapu Fini. And the Mesprit's going to really be very important because that's going to help him versus the Mienshao. Mainly the Mienshao. I wouldn't use Mesprit for just about anything else because Mienshao's just going to wear apart like the rest of your team. But I wouldn't be really surprised if Kelly opted to go with a bit of Hazard Stack versus him. His defog only being Tapu Fini and Mega Arrow. And of course he has Bounce and Espeon. But Espeon doesn't really want to come in versus Frogadier because Frogadier doesn't mind clicking Stat Dark Pulse versus it. And even if Tapu Fini does come in, that just allows him to go right into Superior and potentially just get Leaf Storms going up. Because he can run Z Hyper Beam on Superior and blow back Amoonguss if he wants to. Amoonguss isn't that much of a threat versus Superior, as long as he's able to get off the one Leaf Storm on switch and then potentially just blow it back with a Z Hyper Beam the following turn. So there's a lot of potential in the Torterrapins on both the defensive and offensive side, and I think it's a really tough matchup for the Bouffalants. And just the main Pokemon I'm looking at for the Bouffalants to try and stay in this is, of course, that really offensive Mienshao with High Jump Kick is just so powerful, especially when Kelly doesn't have a Ghost type to potentially threaten the Mienshao from taking 50% recoil. So as long as he lands his High Jump Kicks, he's going to be doing a lot of damage to the team. And Tapu Fini also is a pretty solid matchup. Even though defensive Fini is probably the best for Darmanitan and Zygarde, offensive Tapu Fini can do a good amount, as well as like even a defensive Calm Mind Tapu Fini could do work as well. But maybe an offensive Aerodactyl and Arcanine could do work once you deal with Milotic, but once again, it's going to be very difficult in order to get around that Marvel Scale Milotic. It walls a lot of things on this team. Honestly, Milo doesn't even need to be Marvel Scale this matchup, because it's able just to recover up versus a lot of things and just eat hits. And that's why I love Milotic so much. But if you couldn't tell by how I was talking, I'm definitely in favor of the Maryland Torterrapins here. Only having 2 coaches going inside of the going on side with the Buffalo Lance, and we have also 2 people locking in with the Maryland Torterrapins. One of them being you, CJ.
Yeah, I definitely like the matchup, like you were saying, for Kelly. Nothing against Sacred. Like, he's got some good pieces on his team, but I think he's going to be overwhelmed. Like, Tapu Fini is so incredibly pressured this game by the likes of Darmanitan and Zygarde that one will break for the other. Like, if it walls Tapu Fini, if Tapu Fini walls the Zygarde, then Scarf Darm just cleans up. You know, it's kind of seems like that's how it'll go. I hope you guys are excited. If this recap of all of these matchups did not get you excited, I don't know what will. Ben and I are out here busting butt to get you guys into this.
I will literally start screaming in the next video if that's not good enough for you guys.
That's right. If this video does not get 500 likes, it's going to be 1 hour straight of Ben high-pitched screaming. So, for my sake, please like this video, subscribe to the WBE channel. The growth on this channel has been absolutely insane, guys. We are loving the support. We are loving how passionate you guys are about this league and these coaches. All of these coaches appreciate it too. It really means a lot to them. So yeah, that kind of just turned into our outro, Ben. Like, yeah, we plugged the channel, asked them to like and subscribe. Do you have any other closing comments other than threats of screams?
No, I'm kidding. But that was just too smooth of an outro. Like, I really don't know where to go with that. You kind of just like one up to me on everything, CJ, and it kind of makes me feel like, you know, lesser. Like I'm already the worst analyst here. I think I'm just gonna cry about it tonight. But guys,
yeah, but you're more handsome than me, so
oh yeah, true.
I guess that's
by a long shot too. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, well, okay, let's not go that far.
All right, leave a like for CJ's
starting to hurt my feelings. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check back for all the other games this week. And until the next time, we're signing off. We will see you all later.
Deuces.
Peace.